Hello and welcome to the final keynote panel of day one of Works With. I'm Jennifer Kent, Vice President of Research with Parks Associates, and I'm so pleased to be joined by really the leaders who are helping to work with you all, developers and product manufacturers, to guide, lead, develop, and deploy the Matter initiative. I'm joined by Chris DeCenzo with Amazon Alexa, Rob Alexander with Silicon Labs, Chris Lepre with CSA, Daniel Mineta with Samsung SmartThings, and Kevin Poe with Google. Welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Very much looking forward to this discussion. It has been a year. A lot has happened in the last year, and we are going to be talking about some of the big achievements, some of the big changes, important things to know about where Matter is today. We'll also be talking about some of the hottest topics and questions that we know are on your mind as developers, as manufacturers, people working on products and wanting to know some of the details of how the Matter process works. And then we'll also be giving a little bit of thought to what's coming down the pipe, both in the near term and the long term. So I'd love to start with talking about what really has happened and what we've achieved in the past year. Rob, maybe I'd love to start with you. What really stands out in your mind, about where we are today and what we've achieved in the past year?
Well, I think we've seen some of the fastest adoption in a standards organization that I've ever seen in my many years of working on this. There's an enormous number of products you can see on the CSA's website that have certified for Matter. We have a half dozen of different SDKs that have incorporated Matter, allowing developers choices in where they can build their products and on what platforms. So there's just been a lot of energy going on within the CSA and within the community that's very exciting to see in such a short period of time. It hasn't even been a year since we launched Matter back in October of last year.
Yeah, it's hard to even cite numbers because as soon as you say, well, this many products or this many companies, it's changing, right? That's a number that would be almost out of date immediately. Yeah, Chris, please.
I think I'd also add, the CSA and Matter are really a place for the industry to come together, for partners to come together, for competitors to come together, and really work on ways that their products can work better together. And I think from that standpoint, Matter has never been, healthier. The growth of the membership has been incredible, and the amount of initiatives that are going on within Matter is really pretty stunning. There's just device types, 10 or 15 different kinds of devices that are being developed right now. Infrastructure within Matter to make Matter work better is being done. And as a developer, as a product maker, you really want to know about what's going on within one of these standards bodies because it's sort of like the R&D department in a company. It sort of, sort of pre-tells you what's going to be coming down the pike in 1 year and 2 years and 3 years in terms of products on the market. And if you make products in the smart home space, you probably want to know about what's being developed, maybe, in the device types that you make. You want to be able to contribute to the specifications that are being developed or the use cases. And so, it really is a great time to get involved in Matter and involved in the CSA. And so I think that's, as much as the certification numbers or the products on the market, are a good sort of measurement of Matter, but so is the involvement of the membership. And that's really been pretty overwhelming.
Yeah, maybe we can talk about that a little bit. Daniel, I was just going to say, I know that there are meetings throughout the year in various locations really around the world, and maybe you could talk about kind of the ramp up of that participation from the early days till today, and then go ahead and add your thoughts onto that.
For sure. I think the CSA has always been a great organization that brings people from all over the world, from different industries, from different perspectives, whether it's like major ecosystems or innovative, startups that are building cool devices together. But I think since Matter kicked off, over the first few years, and now we're seeing increasing growth. We've gone from, 100 plus people attending meetings to 400 or plus people attending meetings. The diversity is very significant, again, from like major companies to innovators. And I think that reflects like what Chris and Rob said about the momentum in the market. You'd asked about, without talking necessarily numbers, but you've asked about like deployment and how it's going so far. And the normal technology adoption curve, is you're typically waiting for like both, there's chicken and egg thing, right? You're waiting for both sides of the equation. Someone has to build a thing that the thing plugs into, and then someone has to build a thing with the plug, and that often takes a decade. Within months of launch of Matter, we had like millions of smart speakers that suddenly were Matter compatible. We had millions of TVs from companies like ours that suddenly had Matter hubs in them. And so the addressable market went from 0 to every smart home within a matter of months. And so I think what we're seeing in the participation, both globally and in the organization, is people suddenly having this new addressable market, not waiting and seeing and getting in now and making sure that Matter supports their devices and making sure that they're building for it.
Yep. For those of you who have been involved in standards efforts over the long term within the larger kind of connected home and home automation community, I know that we're all excited about this and so want it to move as quickly as possible, but these things do take time. It takes a long time to build ecosystems of products. Chris, I don't know if you want to comment on, seeing, let's say, Zigbee or Z-Wave or really anybody who wants to add on here. It does take time to build things. And so compared to other standards efforts, how does Matter compare?
Yeah, I think it's really important to remember that Matter is not a product, right? It's a protocol. And it's a super important ingredient for going into products, but it's not itself a product. And so we need to remember when we talk about the development of Matter, that it's the release of a given specification is really providing a piece of what products can be made out of. But great products take a whole lot more than just the protocol, right? A great product, there's a lot of infrastructure that has to be built up. There's a lot of integration that you have to do with your products. There's a lot of testing, right? There's thousands and thousands of hours of testing of your product in real people's homes in order to make great products out of it. And that takes time. And what we've seen with Matter, has been pretty amazing in terms of its growth and its time for coming to market. But we always need to remember that when we hear about things coming out in Matter and the latest version of Matter, that doesn't mean that products are immediately going to follow a given version of the specification. It's going to take time for great products to come out, and that's good, because great products take time to bake and take time to prove themselves in the market, and we want them to take that time. It's a natural process.
Yep. We're going to get into the certification in just a moment, so I'm glad that you brought that up. Kevin, I'd love to go to you just on your thoughts of what's been achieved over the past year, and then Chris LaPre, I'd love to maybe get into the specifics of 1.1 and what's really been released this year. So, Kevin?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of dimensions to how to look through what's been achieved through the past year, and I think, like to Chris's, Daniel's points, when we start looking at the community and the excitement, right, that's been generated, not only from the members, but the broader industry in Matter, it's incredibly exciting to see. So kind of just looking at how quickly that standard was put together, like in roughly about 3 years, the standard was ready, and roughly about a quarter afterwards, that's when you started seeing deployments of Matter integrated as a feature, to Chris's point, across a number of major like organizations and platforms. And from that point, we're already seeing devices in market. Like if you were to go to your favorite retail store, you can actually start seeing the Matter branding and badging in there. So there's a lot of a great foundation built within it, and with the community engagement, we expect that to continue accelerating, continue building. We're definitely in a transition phase right now. I think to Chris's point, there's still a lot of work to kind of go ahead to make sure that everything lands at quality. There's like some of the kind of like, I'd say, the rough edges, right, with Matter kind of being deployed quickly or kind of smoothed out through that process. But from that overall kind of excitement, we are going to be able to kind of move towards that overall North Star. Along with that, if you take a look at the broader industry perspective, with Matter, we now have, in a way, like a common language for all devices kind of speak to each other. We start to take a step back at like IoT in general. Within the CSA, there's just now more work groups, right, to really tackle some of the upcoming new use cases and problem statements that are really affecting the broader industry. So things like data privacy, security, access control, health and wellness. We're going to see, like, as Matter starts evolving, maturing, these new problem areas and these new kind of standards evolving to kind of again move ahead. So from an achievement standpoint, it's been, again, amazing to see the industry just have that excitement, adopt the technology from their achieved deployment, and then moving ahead as we start having like Matter further deployed. There's these new standards that can be built on top and coincide with Matter to kind of create a really cohesive and cohesive IoT experience.
Okay. So, Chris LaPre, tell us a little bit about the Matter 1.1 release that happened a little bit earlier this year, and what problems that tackled, what was new as part of that release.
Yeah, so 1.1, so we did announce that we were going to be doing 6-month release cadences. 1.1 was the first one. We're working on 1.2 now, and we've got some efforts underway for 1.3 already. The details of what's in 1.1, not really popping right into my head right away, but there was a number of sleepy device support that was added for 1.1. And some other sort of bug fixes. None of the new device types that we've been working on made it into 1.1. A lot of those are slated for 1.2. We're talking about near-term and long-term features. So that I think that's a little more interesting, at least to me, in the context of new device types. So that's white goods appliances, which is pretty exciting, and robot vacuums is another one that's coming. And then a lot more effort on that sort of near-term piece that we were going to talk about, I think, later. But.
Yeah. Well, and not just to skip over on the sleeping devices point, right? Maybe let's talk a little bit about, what that really means, right? And then I think it's a great example of you have a release, right? You're getting feedback about what's working, what's not working. And then within that 6-month cadence, addressing it, right? And releasing an update to address it. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, and just there's also more work being done on the sleepy devices piece, but the ability to sleep for longer than a certain amount of time, I think, was the big piece there. So you can have devices that might even sleep forever and only be woken up like when there's motion detected or some sensor activation that wasn't supported well when things were started. But now that does work, and like I said, there's more work being done on that, and that's just something that you need in the smart home for sure. Those initial device types that we were working on didn't really need that, though. So that was something that we did prioritize differently than we might have if device types were different.
Okay, great. Another big announcement that's happened in the past year is an opening of a new certification and testing lab, right, in Portland. So that's up and running. Developers, manufacturers can access that new lab as well.
Right. So that's an interoperability lab is what we call it. And so, members have access to it to show up and be able to test. We're filling it up now with every device we can find. So companies come and certify devices, but that doesn't mean we can necessarily find them on the market. There is that lag that Chris was talking about. It takes time to make these excellent products, and certification is just a piece of it. So we're populating that lab with every device we can find, and then we're running tests as well, making sure that everything works as we expect them to work, maybe feeding some of that back to members as that might be applicable. But then, members can also show up there, run their own tests, and make sure that their products, their ecosystems work appropriately without having to populate that lab themselves.
Well, so let's take that opportunity to jump into some of our hot topics here questions that we get from the developer community, questions we get from manufacturers about, the process and really the vision for Matter. So one is about the certification process, about the speed of the process, the cost of the process. I think we want to kind of tackle this head on. Chris, I'll go back to you. Rob, I don't know if you also want to chime in here, but can you tell us about the experiences that developers are having in the certification process today?
Yeah, so we try to make sure that everything's available to developers ahead of time, right? So our open source SDK is publicly available. Everybody can look at that, see sample code, and you might be making a light switch, for example, and so what a light switch looks like, but now there's sample coded there for the light bulb, so you can just put that on a device, on a silicon, whatever you want to use, test device, and then actually be testing those things all the way through. And the same with the test harness itself. You can run through all of those tests and make sure that everything's going to pass all those tests before you have to pay money to go to the test labs and all that sort of stuff. So I think, that we're trying to make sure that everything is available for developers, that they can go through the process, make sure everything works, and then enter the actual process of certification and testing.
And, Rob, maybe from your perspective too, what are you hearing from developers? Any concerns or anything that you want to address in the certification process?
Yeah, Matter's definitely got a lot more components to it than some of the previous technologies, but I think this is something that ultimately we know end users really like, right? So the fact that Bluetooth is a key component of provisioning the device and QR codes are there, are really hugely beneficial to commissioning. It makes that experience much more easy to them. That does mean that we do have to rely on Matter to also certify the device for Bluetooth and for either Thread or Wi-Fi if it's choosing to use those technologies. So there are more technology components. But we've kind of learned over the years with the industry that that is a huge benefit, and it makes sure that the product really works well and is interoperable. That being said, we have been listening to the concerns of the members of how we can make sure that's as fast as possible, it's as clear as possible, because I think when it comes down to it, it's predictability. Manufacturers really want to be able to know they can launch at the point in time that they're ready for launch and not be gated by that. So, the CSA continues to take feedback and work on different programs we have to speed up the certifications and the recertifications. So we're continuing to improve this, make the tools available, teach members how to use the tools for themselves. So I think all of that will eventually, create a community and education that will streamline this process quite a bit.
So I've taken a couple of products through the certification process, and I learned a lot by doing that. And I think the advice that I would give to device makers, and developers is really to actually use those tools during your development cycle, right? Certification for Matter is not, just a checkbox item. It's actually quite involved. It can be time consuming, especially if you don't know how to use the tools and you haven't actually run the tests against your product. So I would recommend when you're developing your product that you're actually using the tools. The tools are really more or less the Matter SDK, and they're the example apps. And so you can simulate any of the devices, you can simulate the controllers, and so you can actually fully develop and test your product using those tools. And if you do that at development time, when it comes time to actually run those test cases at a lab, you actually are going to know how to troubleshoot the problems that might come up. You're going to know how to reproduce them quickly and address them. And so, and I would even say if the tools aren't working great for you, then contribute to them. These are open source, and so you can actually help make the tools better. We're doing a lot around automation right now within Matter. But we're mostly volunteer run, and so you as a developer can make the tools better, and and also just get to know them when you're developing your product.
Now, Kevin, I've heard you mention the idea that certification's a journey, right? You're not really just getting certified on Matter. There's Wi-Fi, there's Thread, right? There's other certifications that as a product developer making connected consumer IoT or other type of IoT products that you're going through as well. Tell us what you mean about certification as a journey.
Well, I think it just kind of like taking a step back, like again, there's that kind of full user experience, right? I think, and when we start looking at Matter, as like Rob alluded, there's, network technologies that Matter runs on top of. There's like Thread, Wi-Fi, BLE, and through that, there's a certification process within it. And then once like Matter's like built, it is an ingredient, brand, or a feature, right? That's kind of built into overall products. And so depending on what the user journey that a developer wants, they're gonna want to kind of run through and make sure that from a certification standpoint, they're going through these different steps. And then, at some point, if there's additional testing to work with, a user's favorite system, there may be some additional testing there too. But I think the end goal is ultimately that like a user just wants that device just to work, right, in their favorite systems and environments, and just kind of working through, all those kind of different steps. It is a bit of a journey, right, to kind of get to that overall kind of like end user experience where the user has great quality, right, and again, like a plug and play that is experience that just works there. So there's, again, just a number of steps involved there.
So the next hot topic we definitely want to talk about is data privacy and security, not just really around Matter, but this is very impactful for smart home generally, and for when we think about the end user point of view, right? Consumers are concerned about the privacy of their own personal data, as well as the security of their connected products. So Parks Associates does a lot of consumer survey work, and when we survey consumers, households who don't currently have any smart home devices, one of the number one barriers they tell us is that they have privacy and data concerns. So it is, it's a barrier to the industry generally. What does certification with Matter do as a baseline, right, to start for baking in at least a baseline of data privacy and security, and then how are we thinking about evolving Matter's role in that conversation? And Rob, maybe I'll start with you there, and then Chris.
Sure. Matter at its basis does have a security attestation element to it that provides a framework for a number of different items that are critical to the device. Secure booting and other special handling of the special keys that the device uses. But we all know that that is just one element as a starting point. Ultimately, what consumers want isn't to know that the chip is just secure, but the whole product and the experience is trustworthy. And I think that takes a lot of time to build up. And is going to be the entire industry understands that it's needed. So, within the Connectivity Standards Alliance, we have a product security working group that is working on a specification to, really build out that whole process and to define how the whole product is secured from the cloud to the device to the mobile, which is all part of that experience. And we know that a number of the government entities are moving in this direction. Certainly the White House recently announcing the Cyber Trust Mark, right, to really help give a new brand that isn't just a single company's brand, but is an overall benefit for the industry to say if we abide by those, then abide by those rules and adhere to the best practices, that we can start to bring the credibility to these products that are not just built by the biggest of companies that already have that, but are small companies that can, innovate and yet still have that trustworthiness.
Yeah, well, sort of repeat some of the things that have been said already. Matter is this ingredient brand that sets the bar quite high for protocol security. Rob mentioned the device attestation and the certificates and all that. But that's what it is, today. And what the Connectivity Standards Alliance wanted to do was to say, all right, what are the problems in the IoT, in the smart home? And I think to the point you're making, one of the things that stops people from buying connected devices is my device going to be part of a botnet, or because it's not secure, or what is going to be done with my data once it's in the cloud or it's out, out from this product. And the product itself is making data as well, like am I home or am I not home, that kind of information. And so Rob mentioned this, but we've started different work streams, different working groups, we call them, that are focused on product security. That's on process to come out later this year. Because we don't know exactly what it's going to be, we can't say, okay, because you're working on Matter, you must do whatever this group comes up with on the product security side of things. It has to be separate. But that is a problem that the IoT sees, and so we're trying to figure out ways to solve it and create a mark for, yes, this is a secure product, and yes, it will get updates for the next X number of years or whatever it is, the kinds of things that stop people from buying devices because they don't know that information. And the same with data privacy. Again, it's a separate work stream, separate groups of companies working on it, but it's the same problem that people have about, do I want to buy this device or not? What's going to be done with my data? Hopefully, we'll come up with what I'm envisioning, I think the group is envisioning as a nutrition label type thing. What is going to be done with my data once it's into the whole system? And it might be different, like if this product is connected to that ecosystem, the nutrition label might have to look a little bit different. But those are the kinds of answers we're trying to provide, systems we're trying to provide member companies to then give that information to consumers so they can confidently buy those products.
I think just touching on kind of Chris's point, I think around like the intents around those initiatives, it's really like up-leveling the best practices really around data privacy and security, and at the same time like also providing transparency in how that information is being used. So with that, then users and consumers have the confidence, right, to adopt whichever these technologies or products that they actually want.
And not only from the end user side, but also the companies making products, right? You need to be confident that if we're data sharing, that I'm not exposing the products that I'm developing to vulnerabilities. I don't know if Kevin or Daniel, from being in products that you're releasing to the market, you have any, thoughts on that about how Matter can help give you as organizations confidence, that as being part of this ecosystem, your products are also secure from vulnerabilities.
Yeah, I'm happy to start, Dan, if you want to chime in, but I think just kind of starting some like Rob's points, when looking at like Matter, with like security for Matter, that the standard itself was built with a lot of the security best practices in mind. So, not only is it, is there like good like security like in transit and out, like when you're kind of like when these devices are talking to each other, but also like how these devices kind of get provisioned and come on board, right? Like that attestation that Rob talked about. It's, you know, there's a strong security model that was built into it. Very importantly, at some point, like even if you have the best, you know, like spec or standard around security, like there might be implementation challenges, right? And there might be security issues with it. That's where OTA comes in, right? And that ability to address it. And there's also like the distributed compliance ledger, like the DCL, that helps kind of federate out the ability to actually find these new updates and then, you know, update, you know, if the user, like if the device has access to it. So when looking at that overall foundation from a local device connectivity standpoint, there's a really kind of great foundation built on top of it. And from there, it's like the ability to build, you know, rich use cases built on that really strong foundation. So, you know, there's certainly a lot more work ahead. That's especially why these new work groups are being created. But there is that foundation to build really rich use cases because, you know, that security is, you know, we have a really good baseline around it. But I don't know if Daniel has some additional thoughts.
No, I think you guys have covered it, thinking about like how Matter was designed and how it was built on a technical level. I think if you look at it architecturally, the fact that it's a local protocol, the fact that it connects securely in the home, I think a lot of that is actually about unlocking choice for users and for developers. So, you know, we have had conversations in the work group about how, you know, this use case needs to work in a cabin in the woods with no internet access. And if you're a user that really wants to keep things local, you have that opportunity to do that. You know, it's smart things. We've supported technologies like Zigbee and Z-Wave, and a lot of our users have liked that because it allows them to have local connectivity. But it also allows you to layer services on top of that. And maybe you do have some cloud access, and maybe there is some sharing that the user can consent to because they see value in that. And that's like how a lot of other technologies work. The user has some choice as to whether they want their data to stay local or they want to exchange it for some value. But I think starting from that secure foundation allows that choice and allows a lot of different models for both companies as well as users.
I think, you know, one other element of that is that we definitely understand that this is a long journey, and it's not going to be over with just a release of a specification. And I think it's very critical to get into other areas of the IoT. You know, certainly we want to move from just products that we're kind of hoping have the right security and data privacy for convenience and that sort of thing, to really counting on it, like health and wellness and other groups that the CSA is developing technologies for, have a much higher expectation. And that is a huge part of this there. So this is sort of a layering of each of these different pieces. The Matter maybe is the fundamental transport, and as these product securities and data privacies layer on top requirements, be them technical or otherwise, it'll be key to getting into these other areas of the IoT industry.
Fantastic. Thanks for all that discussion. So I want to make sure we hop onto some other hot topics, one of which is about excelling Matter forward, right? Uptake, getting products out there, raising consumer awareness. Kevin, maybe I'll go back to you, and I don't know if Chris DeCenzo, if you have, you know, additions to make here, but what's really needed in your mind, maybe looking over the next year, to excel Matter forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a couple of different key areas. So I think, again, one, kind of taking that really long time ago to step back, Matter's like come to market very, very quickly, especially from like the initial kind of kickoff. I think it was like December 2019 to where we're at now. It's just incredible to go see that like the standard itself has been ratified, you know, as of October 2022, and now again we have, you know, devices with it like deployed as a feature in the product, such that they can kind of control other Matter devices and Matter devices in market right from that point. So I think that being said, there's probably a number of kind of key pain points that really, again, we're in transit phase that will help kind of further accelerate Matter's overall momentum. So one is just more devices available in market, right? I think this is where there's a lot of certified devices in through the Matter work group. With it, it does take a bit of time for these to, you know, kind of go through the internal validation and, you know, basically be shipped, you know, like to retail and get on shelves. That'll take, you know, a bit of time, but we're going to see more devices, more device types, and, you know, that kind of further there. The other one with it too is just really around the overall kind of user experience around kind of key like areas around like setup and, you know, what we call like the multi-admin feature, which is really where users can get interoperable control with one or as many systems as the user chooses. So with it, Matter doesn't although it's like a standard, it doesn't prescribe the user experience, right? So a number of companies worked very quickly, right, to really get the overall feature out. And I think what we're going to find is that there's best practices, right, and what those user experience elements are, and like what those predictable patterns that users were kind of asking for. And so I think through this period, we're going to go figure out what those best practices are, and hopefully with that, again, some of these kind of key user journeys are going to be smoother in the future with that. So I think hopefully with kind of those kind of two elements of like more device types, right? Like kind of just improving some like the rough edges around Matter. We're going to just see like further accelerated adoption all the way through. Along with that, that's all just based on like a really good foundation of just overall product quality, right? So just like you just plug it in, it just works, like setup and again, like connectivity is really solid. That's where things like a lot of the work that the Interop test lab, the test tools are going to be able to help up level that base, foundation, and then along with that, the data privacy and security elements too.
There's also a marketing angle and working with retailers. Obviously, Amazon, a leading retailer for products. Park Associates data shows that the number one channel for smart home products is retail, and within that, online retail. Many products coming to market as well as part of a curated ecosystem through security systems, for instance, as well. But Chris, anything to add on kind of raising that familiarity among consumers or really excelling Matter into the market?
Sure, and there has been sentiment about what can we do to speed up the pace of Matter, or why is it taking so long? And I guess I just want to maybe challenge that narrative where that we should be doing things faster, right? I mean, there's sort of a natural process that takes place for product makers and infrastructure providers, right? Silicon vendors, cloud providers, companies that work with, to provide software tools for device makers. They've all got to build and retool around this new protocol. And that takes time in order to make devices that can be manufactured easily, that can be made, at a reasonable cost so they can be competing with other products. And all of that takes time. And you don't want to rush it because you really don't want to risk the customer trust that you've developed over many years. Most of us have been in this space for a long time. We've worked very hard, to set a high bar for customers, for customer satisfaction and for what makes a great product. And we're not, we can't put that at risk with a new product. We have to make sure that these new Matter products meet that same bar, and that's what we're all doing. That's a responsibility that we have. Customers who are buying products on Amazon, for example, they're used to a certain indications. They want to be able to make sure that the product that they're buying works with the different systems that they use in their house, right? And so you have these popular works with programs. Those things don't go away overnight. And a lot of these programs have had to come out in the last year saying, hey, look, we're now able to to certify that this Matter product works with Alexa. It meets a certain quality bar. It's been tested to work with Alexa, and I know that some of these other companies have these as well. Amazon has this great program called Frustration-Free Setup, which gives you this magical experience where you buy a product on Amazon, you get it at home and plug it in, and it just works. We rolled out that Frustration-Free Setup for Matter products, and we put that into the Matter SDK to make it easy to adopt. And that's something that device makers are starting to use as well. We also, in the last 6 months, have rolled out support for Matter controller support into over 100 million Echo devices. And so what that means is that customers who have Echoes in their house today are going to be able to buy Matter products. I mean, it's great to be able to buy a Matter product, but you have to be able to control it with something. And so this is sort of the infrastructure that I was referring to earlier, saying that when a protocol comes out, that's not an end product, right? All of the different product makers have to go and integrate that that protocol into what they have, and that's what we've been doing recently. And I think you're going to see over time, Matter products come out that meet that high quality bar, and that customers buy. They may not buy them because they're Matter products. They may buy them because they work with the systems that they have today. But you're going to end up getting Matter, slowly permeating into all these different aspects of our smart home. And if Matter products meet that quality bar, Matter's going to be very successful. And so we've got to get that right, though, first. And that's what you see a lot of product makers doing.
Well, I'm happy to report that, your efforts have started to move the needle. So we tested in June 2023 how critical Matter certification is, to your purchase decisions among those who are currently shopping for smart home products, and 37% said that 37% of consumers intending to purchase a smart home device in the next 6 months say that Matter smart home certification is somewhat critical or critical to their purchase decision. So for a new standard, right, this is a baseline we expect to grow, but already there's a baseline of familiarity among those who are actively in the market looking for that certification. So want to make sure we also talk about another key maybe question or topic or theme that sometimes comes up around Matter, especially for those developers or product manufacturers who might be just now coming into thinking about what Matter means for their own product strategy, their own company strategy, and that is commoditization, right? If my product takes on Matter, if it works with everything else, am I giving up some of my secret sauce, right? Are all of the products going to be the same? I know that there's some strong opinions perhaps on that. Maybe Daniel, I'll go to you there to talk about, when you're thinking about developing products, how Matter really fits into that product strategy point of view.
I mean, I think the way I'd put it is Matter broadens that continuum of what's possible to build, right? Like, absolutely, the intent of Matter was to make it not just easier for users to buy smart home products and bring them home and use them, but way easier for developers to create products. And with a more robust supply chain and with a lower cost of developing, and you could even create a product that doesn't need an app or a cloud if you want to try and cut those costs. So, will there be extremely affordable sort of commodity end of the continuum smart home products? Yes, and I think that's fantastic. I think there's a lot of companies that are really excited about being able to address that market. I think there are consumers that are excited about smart home becoming much more affordable, more accessible to different types of users at different parts of their smart home journey, getting it to a price point where you can build it into buildings easily. Like, these are all things that kind of openness and that kind of lower cost unlocks. But it also unlocks the other side of the continuum, which is freeing people up from just focusing on connectivity or locking consumers in with a protocol and then resting on that, to be able to go and innovate on top of that. I think if you look at other technologies, you've seen this before, right? I can go out and buy a $12 Bluetooth headset, which is actually an incredible thing, but that has not limited the market for multiple companies, Bose, Apple, Sony, Samsung, others selling very sophisticated, high-end, and everything in between headphones across the market and being able to innovate there. So I don't think that that's going to be a difference. And I think we're seeing a ton of companies in Matter, and that's why you're seeing a lot of the most recognizable consumer brands participating, because they see how that's going to unlock innovation. It's actually going to unlock their ability to differentiate rather than having to build things that only work on the lowest common denominator because they're limited by the protocols that existed.
I love what you just said there. Then maybe we'll go to the Chris's here, who are both signaling they want to jump in, which is great. Is that, I mentioned earlier that data privacy and security concerns are among actually the top 3 barriers to smart home purchases. The other 2 are affordability of products, which are talking about the ability to bring prices down, right? And the other one is don't see the value to my life. These are just products I don't really get why they're for me. And so the ability to innovate on top of this foundation that's being set with new use cases, right? With more innovation to make products even more valuable to more people really addresses the top 3 concerns that are keeping people out of the smart home market. Chris DeSenza, then Chris Lepre.
Well, I guess I wanted to follow up on Daniel's point a little bit, and I'll get to your comment in a moment about just the whole commoditization topic. When you look at smart home products, there's sort of this continuum where at one end there's interoperability and at the other end there's differentiation, historically. And a lot of times, historically, the interoperability set of devices were ones that would implement standard protocols. But these often were the ones that were most difficult to add differentiation to, because the standard protocols, the Zigbees, the Z-Waves, the BLE meshes, they're often managed on a private network that's controlled by a hub company that might not be the same as the product maker. And so if you had special features in your product, it was really hard for you to expose those to your end customers. If you were on the differentiation side of the spectrum, you would tend to choose Wi-Fi as a protocol, and you would have a cloud connection for your device, and you would have a custom app. And this was the way that you made sure that customers knew all of your special features and got access to them. Matter is actually special because it gives you the best of both worlds. It gives you this interoperability side where you can interface with all the major smart home systems that support Matter. But you can also, if you want, you can have a cloud connection, you can have a custom app. device makers were very vocal in the development of Matter to make sure that they were going to be able to have this option for differentiation. Not everyone realizes this, but device makers have the choice, for their device if they want to require a custom setup flow. So if they want to, they can make sure that when you're setting up their product, the customer downloads their app or goes to their website. Maybe you need to make sure that they set up the product correctly. Maybe you want to make sure they understand all the special features of it. And so a product maker has that option. They also can go and they can extend the standard clusters with custom commands and custom attributes. They can even invent their own custom clusters. And so there's an incredible amount of differentiation and customization that can be done in Matter. And I think, whereas maybe we haven't seen a lot of products yet take advantage of it just because it's so new, I think over the next couple of years, you are going to see a lot of product makers who step into Matter that have these differentiated products, and they can continue to do that with Matter.
Yeah, I was going to take it a slightly different way where I think, Daniel and Chris were talking about like improving the product itself. I think a lot of companies are going to move into services as well. So here's a device that I'm offering you, and now you're going to want to download my app because I can help automate all of them around your home. I think energy management is a great one where I can just discover all the energy devices in your home, and I can help you save money as the cost of energy fluctuates throughout the day. Those types of services, and there's lots of others, just great lighting experiences, as lights follow me around or music follows me around or whatever it is. Those types of services are going to, be things that, yep, I'm going to make this device and sell it. And yeah, maybe I'm not going to get that much money out of it, but now I'm offering you a service and I'm right in front of you, and maybe I'm putting ads or however I'm going to actually monetize that is separate. But now it's opening up this new layer of services that.
And that doesn't have to just be for device makers, right? Because Matter is an open protocol. Previously, if you wanted to, let's say, recruit a number of devices into an innovative service you have, whether it's classic things like security or energy management or, maybe more entertainment services, you had to have these like B2B relationships, or like you could only work with the devices that happen to have their own API. And so that was only like 3 out of the 10 lights that a consumer might have in their home. And so these were never really complete experiences. But today you could build a service that can connect to all these devices over Matter, even if that consumer has, another system as their baseline smart home system, and still be able to play. So the smart home's going from this, like that walled garden approach to much more of this like Venn diagram of layered services. And I think we're going to see a ton of innovation in that space over the next few years.
Yeah, one thing I'm really excited about on the home services side is the ability to have very practical, pragmatic solves for real pain points in people's lives. So that's where you really hit the mass market and the mainstream buyer instead of the early tech adopters, right? When you have maybe the skilled trades, when you have electricians and plumbers and HVAC, being able to leverage the connected devices to provide even better services to the homeowner. Something I think is coming down the pipe. Very excited. So let's talk about what's coming. So near term, long term, what you see coming out next. So Chris Lepre, I want to start with you because if you could give us a little bit of insight into the process in deciding what's coming out on another spec release, right, on a next update, not necessarily saying what's definitely coming, but how you make the decision about, what gets released and what doesn't. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, we're really pretty democratic about that. Other people have mentioned this on the panel already. We have a release cycle. We're going out twice a year. The train is leaving the station. And so it's really about who has come to contribute the device types to make sure those device types are ready to get on the train. And so, we have a lot of interesting work. I think someone quoted a number around 15, less than 20 device types. I think there's a lot more that we're sort of talking about adding to that as well. So wouldn't be surprised if we're, adding lots and lots more device types in the near future here. But on the near term, I mentioned them before, robot vacuums and white goods appliances are getting ready to go, hopefully in the next release or the release after that. And that's exciting for, I think an enabling piece of it. The alerts I can get from my white goods appliances are sort of interesting, but now how can I interact with that from a health and wellness perspective, I think is interesting. Is my mom who lives alone interacting with her home the way she always does, or is there some type of alert there that might notify me that maybe I should call her and see if everything's all right, if she's moving around a little bit more slowly. So that's something on the near term. And then on the longer term piece, we've got energy management, I think is one that I'm really excited about, that we've already talked about. The services that opens, the same with water management, I think is something, leak detection, that's probably going to get fast-tracked. But then once you have leak detection and other water management, just smart faucets, other things on the water management side, just water conservation, I think is another piece that's particularly interesting in lots of regions around the world. And right now it's kind of the Wild West in terms of how can someone help me conserve water around my home. But those standards, I think, are really going to start to help those kinds of major problems that the world is facing and be able to move that needle on those sides.
And what's interesting about and I'll come to you, Kevin, next. What's interesting about some of the use cases that you're pointing to in the near term too is how many other ecosystem players they involve. So when you're talking about leak detection, you're talking about home insurance. When you're talking and water conservation, you're talking about utilities, energy management, you're talking about utilities, health and wellness. There's a whole health ecosystem, right? So interesting in the implications when you think of how many other parts of the ecosystem, might get involved here. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just want to touch on Chris's kind of device types, and one additional one is also cameras too. Like that's a very often requested feature for Matter, and that's another one the Matter work group is working on as well. I think even just kind of looking ahead on that, there's in addition to device types, just further improvements again, like around some of those kind of key parts of the device lifecycle that Matter really help standardize things around, like setup and multi-admin. There's again work underway, right? Just kind of keep improving those aspects there. So hopefully with it, just the experience keeps getting better and better, right? As these evolve too. But cameras are definitely an important one that the group's working on.
I think it's important to remember that, like you said, we're a very democratic organization. If there are companies that want Matter to support their device type, you just join and you put your idea on the table. And usually, we require a certain critical mass, like 3 or more companies to support that. And you can usually find at least 3 companies that think your idea is a good idea. Like you said, there's often a whole ecosystem of companies around that. And what makes it across the line into support is really just what resources companies put into it. So this isn't, this isn't a closed process. It's a very open process. And we are, as we see more and more members coming in, we're seeing that pipeline continue to increase.
Well, I mean, and we can name the things that are being worked on. We may not know when they're going to come out, but I mean, we've got, the energy management devices. Kevin mentioned cameras, Wi-Fi access points. There's all these different kinds of sensors that are coming out. The next generation of TV features are coming out. Better ways for the different smart home systems to interoperate with each other and directly, try to help keep the customer's home, better organized so they don't have to repeatedly put the same information into 10 different systems. Ways of recovering from a network loss for your product, right? Network recovery, better ways to attribute the cause of events. These are all, some of them are device types, some of them are just the infrastructure that makes Matter work better. But these are just a few of the many things going on. And if you're in one of these spaces right now as a developer or as a company, you want to get involved. I mean, you probably have experiences to bring in to the table and to help make sure that what comes out of Matter is even better. And we want to hear from you now to make sure that your products are going to be able to work with Matter.
Yeah, what a great call to action. If you want to see it be built, right? Get involved. Yeah. Come on, come work with us. One other kind of, I don't know if it's near term or long term, so I'd love to hear your opinion on this, and then we'll go down the line and wrap up. But one thing we see pretty strongly in the smart home ecosystem and those manufacturers and developers who are involved in smart home is really looking at outside of the home to outside of the single family home to multi-dwelling units, multi-family properties, and a lot of momentum there, right? Because of the scale that you can reach and because of the major problems with fragmentation and legacy infrastructure that owners, operators are dealing with. Kevin, you're shaking your head pretty hard here. So I'm going to go to you and then if anybody else wants to jump in. So where are we at, or what interest are you seeing among the developer community in applying Matter into like an MDU ecosystem?
Yeah, I think it's from a high level, those problems definitely resonate a lot. Especially when looking at how everyone kind of works and lives, like many people live in MDUs. I personally live in MDU. So like, just like those types of problems now that we have kind of Matter V1 kind of ready, like those are really important to kind of like, challenges to tackle, like MDUs, hospitality, and kind of so forth. I think the really fascinating thing is like when starting to look at those kind of, again, like those kind of key core features that matter, like we have the foundation there, but there's a lot of work to go like tackle those cases. Because like in some cases, it's like, it's not the DIY use case anymore. It's like a pro installer, someone else actually doing it on behalf of the user. How do we work through like the privacy security through all those different challenges? Like there's different considerations to really make sure that that end-to-end experience for those use cases are done really well. I think this goes to Chris's point. Like this, like there's a community that's really excited about these problems, but it requires having the expertise and individuals who really know this stuff, right? And actually coming in the forum to really help contribute and really help like evolve the spec in that way. But I think from a community standpoint, there's already a lot of interest in it. It's really just working through the challenges and really kind of delivering in a timely fashion. But I don't know if Daniel, you have some additional thoughts, but definitely there's like a lot of it definitely resonates. It's just more how do we build that path right towards that end vision.
Yeah, I think I'd echo that as well. The types of applications that are interesting to like the single family home are obviously very interesting in MDU and MFU, even in hospitality and in commercial. We're all just humans, and we want those same quality experiences and quality of life changing experiences. And to Kevin's point, I think we needed to work on making the devices that we have in our home that are smart work just as reliably and easily as the ones that we're replacing, and then we can start figuring out how to scale that and how to go from one user installing a handful of devices to an installer installing thousands of devices in a building. There's obviously a gap to fill there in terms of the tools, but getting those core fundamentals correct was important. And as you just heard, like many of the device types that a bunch of us just like rattled off, you can imagine those would be super impactful in MDU and MFU and hospitality and commercial, particularly around sensors and water management and energy management. So the foundation's really there.
Yeah, I was going to, accentuate the same thing. In the MDU space, especially if you look beyond the United States, MDU is a much bigger percentage of the world where they live. But then those services that can be added again, like what is it that the landlord needs to do? I think door locks were really popular there because rekeying doors was a big piece, and now if they can just through the cloud reprogram the door locks and change, that's huge savings for them. But then other services that can be layered on top of that. And I think tools are a big missing piece there. But I think MDU is a huge factor that needs a lot of services to be layered on top. And Multiadmin in particular can provide that. If all the door locks are owned by the landlord, but then just through a barcode, I can then connect it to my Alexa or my Google device, then that's, again, I don't have to call someone, I don't have to send someone down to do that. It's just a barcode and an app, and that kind of service can be unlocked.
I'll say we are starting to see traction even like in, let's say, the building space or the builder space, because one of the big problems is all tenants and renters and buyers, they expect smart home. Younger generations, they want this type of technology in their place. They don't want to have to replace all of the appliances that they get with their new home or replace all the light bulbs. But it's been really hard to put a particular type of smart home into the home because you don't know what that user is going to show up with, and you don't know what it needs to be compatible with. And so technologies like Matter make it really easy to put these things throughout a house, pick the brands that the consumer would like, pick the brands that work with the environment, and whatever that user comes to the door with, they can connect that and they can turn that on. And we're starting to see that understanding and that shift happen in that space.
Fantastic. And I think Rob wanted to jump in here too.
Yeah,
So.
I guess, just this blending of devices is going to happen where you will have devices owned by a building owner or other entity, and you have devices that you bring yourself for whatever reason, whether it be I go to an Airbnb or whether I go to a hotel or I am just renting an apartment for a period of time, or I go to offices. There's a whole bunch of different cases where I will you'll bring your own IoT kind of with you and have that expectation that it can work with the existing IoT systems that we're starting to see more and more. And so to me, that's one of the exciting things that I'm hoping Matter will really unlock, is that universality of that basic communications between devices.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have to wrap it. I'd love to go down the row here and think maybe a year out, so about 2 releases from now. Where do you expect Matter to be? What are your thoughts there? And we'll get thoughts from each of you. So where are we at with Matter a year out from here? Chris,
All right.
I am starting with you.
Awesome. Well, so I think that what we're going to see is Matter slowly working its way into more and more of the products that that we buy and that customers buy and that they love. Customers are going to be delighted by the features of these Matter products. They're going to be delighted by the fact that they can buy ones and have them automatically get set up through frustration-free setup, or they're gonna be delighted because they have snappier local control, because of local control, like things will just work a little bit more reliably. You're going to find that. That products, more products are available to customers than they had before, right? We already see by product makers adopting Matter, suddenly they don't have to choose just one ecosystem, for their product to work against. Eve is a great example of a product that used to just work with one system. Now it can work with all the systems that support Matter. I think from a developer perspective, you're going to see a lot more infrastructure. We've talked about this a number of times, how that's really important for you to be able to actually make these products in an economical way. You're going to see more sort of factory floor oriented infrastructure that helps you make your devices more efficiently. Amazon makes a number of different features for them. The AWS private CA helps product makers make those device attestation certificates in a really economical way. The Alexa Connect Kit for Matter allows device makers to connect their products to the cloud, so they can measure how how well they're doing in customers' homes, what kinds of problems they might be having, and manage the OTAs for them. And I think you're going to see from the CSA, better certification tools and a more stable Matter SDK. And so I think you're going to see a lot of great things coming to Matter, and it may not be the top of the line like Matter products taking over the world, but you're going to see slowly better and better products coming out that have the Matter label on them.
I think one of the things that we're working on quite a bit is sensors. We want more and more sensors in the home. Users want that leak detection. They want temperature monitoring in different parts of the home. A whole bunch of security systems, and we're doing a lot in the Matter standard to improve the battery life, to really make sure it can extend it for as long as possible, so users don't really have that problem of replacing batteries or worrying why things can't connect. So I'm really excited to see, within these product lifecycle or product development life cycles, that we'll see a lot more sensors come on the market and enable these more use cases. That once I have this ability to put this device anywhere and I don't have to worry about having a plug, that we'll see a lot more interesting uses.
I think it's about a year out where we're going to start to see those services that we were talking about. Right now it is a lot of the development cycle, making sure the products that you're getting are great. But it is going to take some time to get those services in place: energy management, water management, great lighting features. Making sure the lights are on where I am and not on, like the dad turning lights off around the house. That kind of thing is going to happen automatically, and it's that service that I think is what I'm looking forward to in about a year.
I think we're going to start seeing that market flywheel really start to spin. I think, as we all talked about, one of the great things about Matter is it's now deployed. The addressable market is out there. You mentioned 100 million smart speakers. That means it's in hundreds of millions of homes that are ready to go. Some of those consumers may not even know. Like, most of the TVs we shipped last year have a Matter hub built in them, and many of those consumers are now just starting their smart home journey. So I think as they start that, as they find that it's easy, as they find that it's consistent, that one device isn't totally different setting up than the next one, and that encourages them to continue rather than stop their journey. You start to see more coming through retail. You start to see retailers see that the Matter devices are performing better. They're not being returned as much. They're driving demand. Love to get to a point where retailers actually require Matter for all the device types that we support. We'll see if that's a year or out. And I think you're going to start seeing that momentum. And by that point, hopefully, we will have already covered many of the core device types that consumers expect in smart home.
I think it just, for me, it just goes back to just the principles around Matter, right? And I think we're going to see a really meaningful improvement towards landing that overall vision. So one is around just user choice, the ability to just have their favorite devices work with their favorite systems. I think we're going to just see more devices available in market. In addition, just better adoption of the controller functionality, such that you control it with your favorite systems for those given devices. In addition to that, then is just like the ability of just for these devices just to work, just work with your favorite systems too. So with that, then the ability to kind of set up, have that interoperability, that latency of performance. Like I think we're gonna just have meaningful steps forwards in it. And with that, then like that increased trust, like okay, I can actually build the smart home that just kind of works for me. That's really what's gonna open up that aperture to have like services and kind of like new kind of experiences kind of built on top of it. And I think along with that point too, like just like the like privacy and security will be more top of mind as well from that point. So just making sure that like things like the nutrition label and so forth can be ready there too. So I think really like making sure that like that part works of just that product promise around Matter, we're gonna have a much more meaningful step on that. And from there, we're gonna again kind of be able to kind of grow and just have a very exciting time in the industry, just create like great new experience on top of Matter itself. So I think with that, if there's things that are kind of like, missing in Matter, kind of pain points, I think like right now is a great time to join the community, right, to help contribute towards it.
The great final words. I'd like to thank you all for giving us both a peek behind the scenes as well as a look forward about what we can expect over the next year and then even further out. And I think those are great words to really end with. If there's something that you want to see built, come build it, right? Jump in. The invitation's open. Thank you.